Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Bench2Market talks. This is our first one for the 2024-2025 year, and I think we're off to a great start with a really important and timely topic, and that is the art of talking to stakeholders. So this is one of the first things that you really want to do if you're thinking of commercializing a product or a technology. You really want to try to understand what the problem is that you're trying to solve, what the needs are for your customer or your stakeholder. And there is an art to it, and we're going to hear more about that in a moment. Next slide. Nope. Ah. Yep. Okay. Before we get started, I wanted to make everybody aware of some of the really excellent commercialization resources that are available to you through Biolocity. We have this ongoing legal office hours with Nicole Morris, and you can talk to her about a number of the topics that are shown here on the slide. And if you want to do that, you can make an appointment at the link at the bottom of this slide. As always, Biolocity offers these pro bono innovation office hours. I really suggest that anybody who is interested in commercializing or interested in the Biolocity program, that you get in touch with these folks. And they are a wonderful resource. Even if you don't get selected into the Biolocity program, they can give you a lot of great advice on how to get started. Also, I wanted to make you aware of this funding opportunity with BARDA. BARDA has a relationship with Biolocity. If you think that one of your technologies addresses one of these areas of interest, please do contact the Biolocity team and to get more information about this program. Our next Bench2Market talk is a journey through the trenches, and there you will hear from entrepreneurs that have begun to commercialize their technology and that are at different stages. They'll talk about some of the things that they learned along the way in commercializing their university-based technologies. So that's on October 16th from starting at 12. Today's talk, as I mentioned, is going to be on the art of talking to stakeholders, and Melissa Heffner is our speaker. Melissa is a program director for Venture Lab for Georgia Tech's Venture Lab, and she's the co-director of CreateX Female Founders Program. She's an adjunct instructor for the NSF I-Corps program and a lead instructor for Georgia Tech's I-Corps South Node. She has taught startup methodology to over 800 startups. In 2020, she co-developed and co-founded the Female Founders Program to provide a space for women-led entrepreneurial teams to explore first business models, engage with an all-female coaching team, and interact with successful female entrepreneurs. So without any further ado, I will turn it over to Melissa. And by the way, should you have any questions, please put them in the chat, and I'll make sure that that we address them.
I can just hold this. Well, then I'm holding both, so you're right. I should lavalier. Okay. How does that sound, y'all? Not too close? Okay. Looks like we're good. Okay. Yeah. Hi. Very excited to be here. Is the camera back there? Is that where my online folks are? Yeah. Okay. Everybody online. Glad to be here today to chat with you. Cindy gave a great introduction. I appreciate it. And yes, my role is to help research faculty, their PhD students, grad students, undergrads even, figure out if they have something that's worth commercializing. A lot of times we build solutions, build products in a little bit of a bubble. And so my role is to help folks get out of that bubble and figure out, is there a product and a market? Is there a market for this product? Was going to introduce you to me just a little bit so that you know why I'm standing up here and talking to you. As Cindy said, I'm with Georgia Tech's Venture Lab, which is the Institute's incubator for technology startups. I also wear a hat with the Georgia Tech Create initiative, which was founded to introduce entrepreneurship to as many folks on campus as we can. I have also taught with NSF I-Corps program, with Georgia Tech Lorraine. We have I-Corps Puerto Rico, where we've taken this lean startup entrepreneurship program to them. This semester, I'm guest lecturing at Agnes Scott, which is a lot of fun down the road in Decatur. So that is a very different vibe than Georgia Tech's campus, but I'm enjoying it. And we also have a relationship with Science Foundation Ireland, which you can think of as like the NSF for Ireland, if you will. We do a lot of teaching over there as well. So, and those are my people. The middle one I just sent to college for the first time. So if I seem a little sad every other day or so, that's why, because I miss her. All right, I want to take you back to the way that startups were developed. So take it back to like the early 2000s, if you will, and the history of how we were working on commercializing technology at that time versus how we do it now. Years ago, we sort of approached startups like we do big businesses. We said, okay, we've got an idea. We've got a product we want to put out there. Let's figure out who our CEO is. Let's figure out who our CFO, our CTO is. Let's write a business plan. And let's put this business plan together. And without fail, the majority of business plans have projects being profitable by about year 5, at least, right? They all have that upward trajectory because they're everybody's best guesses at this point as to what the market is going to want and desire and pay for. They're pretty thick. When I'm talking to business students over in Scheller, they've all done some kind of version of a business plan. And they talk about it. They're laborious, they're tedious. There's a lot of detail that you have to put in there that, frankly, most projects that are just getting started don't have the answers to. And so not me, the lean startup method figured out that they had to come up with a better tool, a better way to sort of pull together what is this plan going to look like. Enter onto the scene a gentleman by the name of Steve Blank, who was teaching out at UC Berkeley and Stanford, was also doing some VC work. And so Steve's job was to teach entrepreneurs. His job was to also figure out what has commercial potential, what's actually going to be successful in the market, and what will help make my venture firm some money, right? What's the ROI going to be? And he started to recognize that the return on investment was not great. I think the statistic is that about 75% of venture capitalist-backed projects fail. That's a huge number. So wanted to figure out how do we make these teams a little bit more successful? And he helped codify this customer development process that we talk about. And so where we start all of our teams now is over on the left side here in this customer discovery phase. And that teaches teams, research faculty, and their students that yes, you have a great idea. Yes, you have a solution. Yes, you have a problem that you want to try to solve. But how does that problem exist in the real world outside of the research that you're doing? And it asks teams to go engage with end users, to go engage with the people in the ecosystem for whom they want to develop a product. And you'll see it takes you through various stages. Most of the teams that particularly Cindy and I work with sit in customer discovery and customer validation for a long time because it takes a minute to figure out what that part of the project is going to look like before you're ready to actually get a customer to pay you something for it and then start to build the project out from there. Alex Osterwalder was working on his PhD. He's originally from Switzerland. I don't remember where he did his doctorate, but I've been to a conference of his, and he likes to make the joke that the only person other than his advisor that read his dissertation in full was Steve Blank, the guy I showed you earlier. And so Steve Blank took a look at what Alex was writing in his dissertation, and he was also trying to figure out how do we build startups more successfully? How do we make translate the research that's happening in a university setting? How do we get that into the real world in a way that has a higher success rate? And he was talking about it in his dissertation a tool that eventually materializes what we know as the business model canvas. So this is a tool that for startups replaces the need for a business plan. Now, business plans are absolutely necessary for startups at some point in their project, but not day one. So this tool is meant to be extremely iterative, and it's meant to illuminate the parts of the ecosystem that you have questions about as a founder that you didn't know you needed to explore. To give you a little bit of a difference between the business model canvas and the traditional business plan, the biggest difference is that it is this iterative tool, that it is the business model is one piece of paper with 9 boxes that has you think through customers and your relationships with those customers and the value that you're going to provide to them and how you're going to provide that value to them and all the resources and activities and partners that you're going to need in order to engage with customers. And then how are you going to make money and how much money are you going to have to spend in order to do that? So it's meant to be a very iterative tool as opposed to our more traditional business plans where the model is already established and you're executing on that. This also works really well in industry. Entrepreneurship is a thing as well. And so the strategizer materials, such as this business model canvas, can also help those of you who think, well, I'm never going to be a founder, but I might go to industry. I might be in R&D. I might be in some kind of product development. These tools are used there as well. One of the biggest changes in how we started thinking about how we teach and how we develop entrepreneurs is that those of us sitting in the commercialization offices on campuses, we're no longer picking the winners. We don't have folks coming to us and pitching their research idea and us telling them whether or not we think it has commercial potential. We instead say, that sounds like you need to go and talk to the market. It sounds like you need to go and talk to end users and all the different folks in the ecosystem to really understand their problems, their pain points, their jobs they're trying to get done. We say that the customers now pick the winners in terms of what projects are going to be successful. We have seen that this method has both helped startups to become more successful because they understand the market better and they put a solution into the market that is actually beneficial. And it also helps folks know what they don't need to develop and what they don't need to spend time and resources on and try to push into a market that doesn't want it, doesn't need it, or isn't ready for it. For those of you who find this fascinating and would like to do further reading, these are some of the materials that we recommend. This business model generation in the middle is where the business model canvas can be found. I will also tell you there are all kinds of resources online. YouTube had some really good videos that walk you through the business model canvas. And if nothing else, I would recommend you downloading Talking to Humans. So it's a free PDF. I think it's free if you have a .edu address. It might just be free in general. But it was written by folks who do what I do up at NYU. And they talk you through the importance of engaging with end users, engaging with stakeholders before you actually finish building out a solution and putting it into the world. So if nothing else, take a look at Talking to Humans because that will help you more than anything in your understanding of why engaging folks in an ecosystem is so important before you try to provide a solution to them. Why is this method different? It's all about the customer. Another word that we use is stakeholder. Another word that we use is the people in the ecosystem, right? It's all about what their experiences are and how you might innovate for them. I'll pause there for a second. Any questions so far? Any questions online? Okay. All right. Okay. So serious question for you. Does this happen? Do companies, do people, do researchers, do innovators make products that aren't widely adopted? What do you think? Yeah. So this doesn't mean that I can't make something and throw it up on Amazon Marketplace and a few hundred people maybe even buy it. We're talking about widespread adoption. And I'll give you some examples of things that have made it into the market but aren't widely adopted. The funny thing about this is that I actually had a student one time, a first-year student, say her mom had sent her to college with this here at Georgia Tech because she didn't want her to get germs from the water fountain. I know. So products that you can find. Actually, I had another student buy these because her chickens got hit crossing the road, and that's not a joke. So what we are looking for and the resources and the solutions that we put out into the world are things that are really going to make a difference for a large group of people and that are going to become standard. And we can't do that without engaging with the folks that we want to create the solution for. So the answer is yes. Companies really do. You can. Any of us can make something and put it into the market. But if we want it to really move the needle, to make a difference, we've got to make sure that it fits with the rest of the ecosystem. I get, not from any of y'all, but I can get pushback from teams. We'll just say they're usually much younger teams that love to throw at us. Well, what about Steve Jobs? Steve Jobs always said, my customers don't know what they want until I show it to them or till I put it in their hands. I can't remember what the exact quote is. All right. As an argument for why do I need to engage with the people that I want to create something for? They don't know what they want. And they're exactly right. None of us, except the folks working for Steve and Apple, had the idea for the iPhone. Did you? Did any of you? No. What Steve was so good at, though, was understanding people's problems, understanding their needs, understanding their frustrations. He did so much observation of customers. He was always in and out of his stores, but even before then, he was paying attention to people's behavior. And so what he understood was the technology that we were walking around with wasn't working for us. And he understood what people were what jobs they were trying to get done with their pieces of technology. And he blended that together to give us all different pieces of technology. The one that I use the most of as an example is the iPhone. So we always start here with our teams because this helps us get a lay of the land. It helps illuminate what we don't even know we need to go find out about. And what this business model canvas does is we think of it as broken into 3 different sections that will help us answer the question as inventors, as researchers, is the thing that I'm working on desirable for a large group of people? Is it feasible? Can I actually build the thing that I need to? Once I understand the desire, once I understand the problem, the pain, the job to be done that I want to address, can I actually build the thing, right? If the answer is cold fusion, well, falls into the non-feasible category right now, unless any of y'all have figured it out, and then let me know because I want in on that. And then it helps us understand, is it viable? Can we spend less building and putting into the world the thing than we will actually generate in revenue? So this is what we are looking for. So it's all about the desirability from a customer's point of view and from the market's point of view, the feasibility of you and the team that you build to be able to make the thing that's going to make a difference. And then can you build it for less or develop it for less that it's going to cost than for someone to take it from you? When we first start customer discovery and we first start our project, just like with the business plan, it's full of our best guesses. We don't know the answers to a lot of these questions. Now, for most of us that are in the research world, this left side of the canvas that includes partners, activities, and resources, that is a very comfortable space for most of us to sit in. We can, no worries, we can figure out what activities need to be done to develop the product or the solution. What activities are going to need to be, resources we're going to have, and partners we're going to need to have to help support those activities, right? We can figure that out. This right side of the canvas, the access asks us to understand things like, what's the value you're delivering to someone? Not the features, not the benefits, but the actual value. How are you going to have a customer relationship with a group of people? How are you going to get them as customers? How are you going to keep them as customers? How are you going to grow a customer base? That's a lot of unknown for us. We don't understand that. And then our channels box that sits over there too wants us to answer the questions of how do we want to actually get the solution into the hands of the people that it's for? Those are the unknowns. So we spend a lot of time hanging out with teams on the right side of the canvas trying to answer those questions. And then what we knew to be true about the left side of the canvas usually falls into place. How do we turn all of those questions that we have about the Canvas into concrete answers that we feel very confident in through a type of experimentation that we call customer discovery or stakeholder discovery? Is that term familiar to anyone in the room? Okay, has anybody done it? What does this look like for you? A little bit here and there, okay?
Brand. So that really just looks like coming up with my own original. It's very design oriented. So just getting people's feedback on that, and what I thought definitely was not the same reaction that I expected. So making adjustments based on that, or just changing the direction.
Absolutely. And that's what we're looking for our teams to do. I was being interviewed for a podcast this morning, and he said, Melissa, you've worked with all these teams from Georgia Tech. Tell me about the successful teams. What do they have in common? And I said, first of all, they're willing to go and talk to customers and hear things that don't validate, that sometimes invalidate what they believe to be true. And when they hear that, they don't fight against it. They make changes based on it. So that's what we see in successes. You'll get there eventually, right? If you're listening to the market, to the people, and iterating, you'll get there. Because the folks that introduced this methodology into a research university environment understood their customer was faculty researchers and their PhD and grad students, they said, how can we map this discovery process to something that will feel a little bit more comfortable for folks? And they mapped it loosely to the scientific method, where the first thing you do is create a project thesis, just a one-sentence statement that answers the questions. Who do you believe your customers to be? Or who do you believe you're providing value to? It's another way to think about it. How are you very succinctly, without a bunch of jargon and without taking up lots of breath, what your product or services solution is going to be? And then here's where the value proposition comes in. This, why are they going to buy or adopt or use or engage with your solution? Because chances are, if people have a problem and it's a big enough problem that it needs solving, they're figuring out a way to do that. Now, it might not be the best solution, but they've got options. So why are they going to fire the solution that they're using now and hire yours instead? So we start every team here because this helps us really hone in on who we think we need to engage with first to uncover some of these questions on our business model canvas. And it's one sentence, which sounds like it's simple. It is one of the harder things teams have to do with us because you really have to get granular. From that thesis, you were able to generate a series of hypotheses that you have on your customer and what you think their problems and needs are, on the value and why you think you are the person to deliver the thing, and then what that's actually going to look like. So we ask our teams to then generate hypotheses that they need to go test. These hypotheses are all about customer stakeholder behavior and what the team believes to be true about the problem or pain point at hand. And then we ask the team to make predictions. Is this feeling scientific method-y for you? Right? It's the same kind of thing. Who do you think you need to talk to? What do you think you're going to hear? What might you observe if you're able to be in their setting? What might you observe when you're having those conversations? It's also helpful if you will pull out what might surprise you, because those are the things that we don't always want to hear, right? Those are the things that teams sometimes shy away from because it might invalidate what they believe to be true. So if we go ahead and call it out, it helps us, it's a little bit easier to digest when we actually hear that thing. And then we run experiments. So in our experiment in the lean startup method is talking to customers. We do this over and over and over again because every time you talk to a new customer, you learn a little, hopefully, you learn a little bit that might change how you need to ask your questions or how you might need to approach the problem space with them. So we are running this over and over again. Here's what it looks like to help you see how it's actually mapped to the scientific method. So we hypothesize with guesses. We test by asking questions, having conversations. We do a lot of our analysis and assessment while we're listening in the conversation, but also that happens afterwards with team members or with coaches to debrief. And then you make adjustments. I have teams come in often and say, I think the way I'm asking this question is not getting me the information that I'm looking for. Let's think about tweaking the questions. All right, questions from y'all on this?
So I hear you referring to the lean.
Yes.
method. Could you tell us a little bit more about that? And is it similar to like the Lean Six Sigma theology and methodology or?
So yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for calling me out on that. So the lean startup method is this idea that you're trying to very quickly prove or disprove the assumptions that you have about the market and what the market needs. So it asks you to have, lots of conversations with lots, and by lots, in some of our programs, it's upwards of 100 conversations with stakeholders as quickly as you can to understand, is there anything here? Am I identifying any problems or pain points that I could actually solve for? So it's meant to be an accelerated pace. It's meant to have you move quickly to answer as many questions as you can on the business model canvas so you can know, do I spend any more time or resources towards this? It's different from Lean Six Sigma, but I don't know Lean Six Sigma well enough to tell you the nuances. Okay. Yeah, thanks. Another term that we use for lean startup is evidence-based entrepreneurship. And the evidence comes from the customers, not from our prior knowledge, not from research, not from journals, it comes from customers. Is there anything online? Okay. Humans, and why talking to them is a good idea. Because we understand our experiences, we understand how we perceive problems and what we think solutions should be for them, but we are an N of one and we have our own biases. And so we have to get out there and explore, are other people engaging with this problem the same way I am? Here's the big myth that we are trying to dispel. And this is particularly tough when I'm on campus like Georgia Tech, where people create things, right? We're makers, we're doers, we like to invent. Customers really are not that interested in your solution. Now, there are folks that are early adopters or evangelical adopters, right? And they want the latest and greatest always, but that's not the vast majority of us. What we are looking for is getting our job done better, whatever that job might be. That job could be my actual job at Georgia Tech. My job could be, how do I grocery shop on a Tuesday night, right? When I got nothing for dinner. Their problems addressed. A pain realized, a gain made. That's what we mean by dreams. Can you help the customer get to the next level faster than a competitor? This is really what folks want. And so the solution that we put in their hands, it's not necessarily that it's cool or that's cutting edge or it's novel or it's never been done this way before, but it's, does it answer those problems for them? Does it take care of a need that they have? We understand that a lot of us create things in this safe bubble of academia, of research, of talking to like-minded folks that usually think what we're working on is a good idea, or we can convince them, show them that what we're working on is a good idea. And so we actually ask our teams to get out of the bubble, to get off campus, to go into industry, to go into the real world, if you will, and engage with folks there to see what the problem really looks like. Now, this idea of talking to customers there's some method to it, right? We talked about the project thesis, developing hypotheses, then we generate questions from those hypotheses, right? We've got some structure to it, which feels very comfortable to us. But you're dealing with people when you actually go out and have those conversations, and that gets a little squirrely. So there is an art to it as well, because we have to be comfortable listening to the conversation and making decisions about what our next follow-up question is, about what our comment is on the fly. And that can be a little tough, and it takes some practice. Stakeholder discovery really is listening to our customers. It's having well thought out questions that we want to ask them to try to understand not would they like our solution or not, but what is their problem, pain point, job to be done really look like for them. Listening to that, asking the right follow-up questions to really dig into anything they've told us that we think needs a little bit more exploration so that we can leave that conversation more knowledgeable about what a solution could look like for them. At no point are we going to ask them, what do you think I should build? If you had a magic wand and you could wave it, what would you want? That's not their job. It's your job as the researcher and as the innovator. It's their job just to share their problems with you, share their pain points, and for you to understand that. Customer discovery is a lot of, when done in its purest form, is one-on-one or 2 team members to 1 stakeholder conversation. For all the reasons, right? Eye contact, body language, building a relationship with someone. Think of this as your first step in a customer relationship. It's actually getting in front of someone and having a conversation with them. I get this question a lot. How many interviews? So I told you in one of our programs, like the NSF I-Corps program that's at the national level, those teams are required to get 100 interviews in 7 weeks. But I'll ask you this question, how many interviews is enough? It's a little bit of a trick question.
And I feel like it is, it's an iterative process.
Yes.
So, it's going to constantly change because you're going to constantly learn new information and then you tweak your process and, you know, your strategy. So,
Yeah. Teams love to ask me this question. They want me to tell them, once you're at 125, you'll know that you're ready to build, right? Or once you're at 40, you'll know that you'll be ready to build. And it depends on the market. It depends on who you're trying to engage with and what you're trying to build out. And I also tell them customer discovery and interviews never stop. They look different. The best companies that are innovative, that are putting out new products, that are meeting customers' needs, are continuing to do discovery. Now, it looks different. They're not searching for a business model like our startup teams are. They're executing on a business model, but they're still trying to understand what is that new product going to look like. And companies that do that have great success. A perfect example of that is, hopefully this isn't too outdated. Does anybody remember Blockbuster? Remember Blockbuster? Okay. And who came in and swooped in and took Blockbuster out of the market? Netflix. Yeah. And what Blockbuster was unwilling to do was innovate and pay attention to customer behavior and have conversations with customers. And if they were having them, I'm not sure they were listening to them because they thought that this mail, do you remember when you could get Netflix in the mail? Do you know that didn't stop until 2022 or 2023? You could still get you could still get your DVDs in the mail. Right. That people, yes, still wanted entertainment, still wanted DVDs, but the way they wanted to consume it looked a little different. And then think about how much that platform has evolved through the years. So yeah, it never stops. You will continue to talk to hundreds and hundreds of users and stakeholders and new customers that you want to pull in and existing customers that you still want to make sure that you are providing the right solution for throughout the length of the project. We talk to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of folks. In customer discovery, what you are looking for is the things you didn't know you needed to know. The things you didn't know you needed to ask about. And that can only come up when you are having conversations with someone, getting them to answer non-biased, open-ended questions that you've come prepped with, and then asking them follow-up questions about, they've just told you that they made a decision to buy X software to help them with their job. Well, you want to know why. Why did you do that? Who was a part of that decision-making? How's it working for you now? What do you like? What don't you like, right? That gives you so much information. It gives you who's making purchasing decisions. It gives you who's making buying decisions, which can actually be different than purchasing. The buyer might decide, hey, we're going to do this, but the CFO is the one who has to cut the check, is the payer for it. They both have to be on board, right? Gives you an idea of how you price something because you go find out, hey, this is what they told us that they bought this new software and integrated it. We know they paid for that. This is their price threshold, right? Anyway, these are all the things that you were trying to understand through these conversations with people. So if it's something that you could, if it's a question that you could Google or read in a journal article or do some secondary research on, it usually doesn't belong in your primary research customer discovery conversations with folks, because then you're looking for the nuanced bits of information. Why so many interviews? We're looking for insights and we're looking for pattern recognition. No one customer is going to tell you the perfect thing that you need to build. So you have to talk to a lot of people to understand the problem fully so that the solution you put out there, at least the first solution, is good enough for a large group of people. And then you iterate on it and you have version 2 and 3 and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So because this is primary data and no one is going to give us the exact same answer twice, it just doesn't happen that way. We're looking for different data points that we can pull together and understand, hey, sort of this is what the picture looks like. We are also doing so many interviews because we are trying to build up our empathy muscle. We are trying to really walk in the shoes of, understand the life of the people that we are creating a solution for. And you can't do that by just talking to a couple people, right? You need to get a broader data set to understand how you are going to deliver value to a large group of people. The other reason we do so many interviews is because we're bad at it until we get good at it. So I would say probably at least the first 15 to 20, we're not great at it. We're asking closed questions. We're asking yes, no questions. We're asking, how many times a week do you use this product? And it's like, well, 5. Okay, what does that tell you, right? You have to put some kind of value on that. So we're bad at it until we get good at it. We get nervous. We don't ask the good follow-up question. I can't tell you the number of times someone's come in with some insightful piece of information. They've said, they bought this. And I said, well, why? And they go, oh, we didn't ask that. Well, who made that decision? Didn't ask that either. You know, all those little things that you forget until you've really built up the muscle memory of having conversations with people. Have you recognized this as well? What did customer discovery feel like you in the beginning?
Oh, I was like completely off. My project was definitely passion driven, so there was a huge bias there already.
Yeah.
And it's not that other people didn't like the product, but they didn't necessarily view it the same way that I did. So the value that it brought to them, I had to learn that, and then just adjust.
Yeah.
What I was offering. Basically.
That's right. And I love the word that you passion. I mean, even if it is considered a passion project, and then if it's something even research related, a lot of us are passionate about our research, right? And we feel this is why we're studying what we're studying and looking into what we're looking into. And you're right. We know what we want the answers to be. We know what we want them to say to us. And we are very smart and that we can tweak our questions in a way that can often get the information we're looking for. So we have to gut check ourselves. We have to run our questions by a startup coach or a mentor that can help us say, oh, no, you're doing a good job here. Or I think you're really leading the witness with this one. Let's think about how you readjust it. Yeah. I tell teams, I like for you to think of yourselves as detectives. And this is such a different mind frame to be in than even that of an inventor. What do good detectives do? They talk to everyone. They track down all the people that could possibly give them information. They pull all those clues together to really try to understand what happened in a scenario. And good founders do that. They consider themselves detectives. They don't assume that if they talk to one key witness, they've got the case solved. They are going to go and knock on doors and track people down at work and ask them, hey, tell me what you saw if you're a detective, or what you heard, or what your experience was. We do the same as very good detectives when we're doing customer discovery. Talk to me about your job. Talk to me about your pain points. Tell me how this experience is for you, right? And we collect all that data before we come to a conclusion, just like a good detective does. There are, I'll just tell you, there's sort of 3 buckets you can place interviews into. This idea of an intercept interview is what we have teams do right off the bat, especially if it's a low bar to sort of get to their customers. Let's say that I don't know, we've got a team right now where their customers are pregnant people. Well, those are sort of those are easier to track down because sometimes it's very visually obvious. Then say if you need to talk to orthopedic surgeons that primarily work on hands. It's a little bit harder, right? You can't necessarily run into that person in Publix because you won't be able to tell from looking at her that that's what she does for a living, right? So intercept interviews can be really helpful if you know your customer segment and they're pretty easy to access. A lot of our teams, or most of our teams, fall into these other two categories where they are making some kind of connection with someone in advance, asking them for some of their time, wanting to have a conversation with them, and really scheduling that interview. When we can't meet face-to-face with our stakeholders, we very much still want to be able to see their body language, read the room, if you will, watch how they're responding to questions that you ask or how they answer certain questions. And so we ask them to be on video. It's easy enough. COVID really helped us with this. This used to be difficult to get people to do. They would rather be on the telephone if they couldn't get them face to face. Now everybody's on video, so it's not a problem at all. To that, we don't do phone interviews in this method. Thoughts as to why? Why no phone? I had one team through the years that they needed to talk to a group of researchers who were on in a different country and were only reachable by satellite phone. Sure, that's fine. For the most part, we say no telephone.
There are just so many cues you can't pick up on with just audio alone.
Yes.
And then even then, it's so easy for that to be skewed based off of like what you think you heard. That might not actually be the tonality.
Absolutely, yes. You need to get a full picture of your customer, the person that you're talking to, and how they're responding to you. And those, I think we forget just how important visual cues are. I was acutely aware of it when I was teaching online during COVID and people wouldn't turn their cameras on, which I totally get. We all had Zoom fatigue. But then I had no idea if anybody was paying attention to me, if anybody was like actively listening with me. It was hard. This method also doesn't recommend surveys. Thoughts on why no surveys?
People could just run through it and just put anything without actually, you don't get that follow-up either.
Nope, you don't. You're right. Yeah. So hard to follow up. What were you going to add?
Kind of similar. I feel like these kind of questions, like they lack a lot of context, and like the question you ask has the context, but the feedback doesn't. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Also, we're working on building empathy. Can't do that from a survey. And remember, this is also supposed to be your first point of contact with a customer. And this is a really impersonal way to make a connection with someone. Okay, so then we get the question, what about a focus group? Method also doesn't allow for focus groups right off the bat. Thoughts?
People aren't as honest, I don't think, always when you have so many people, and it can be a bit intimidating.
Absolutely. You are perhaps not going to be speaking your truth as much as you think you need to because you have the potential judgment or perceived judgment of whoever else is in the room with you. And let's think about, we are asking people about problems, pain points, jobs to be done. So if you pull in folks, if you pulled all of my coworkers, like if you pulled Cindy and me and all the folks we work with into the same room and asked us about our problems and our pain points with our jobs, well, what if one of them's sitting in the room? Or what if one of them's asking the questions, right? That's hard. Group interviews, same kind of idea. You fall prey to that group think. You want to really give someone the ability to tell you what they really think in a way that is not going to be judged by anybody else. And this is why when you're talking to customers, we don't need a lot of information on them. This is why IRB doesn't come into account because we're not asking for anything that is identifying. It might be helpful depending on your project. It might be helpful if you collected, I don't know, age, could be, could not be, gender, maybe, maybe not. What they do for a living, maybe, maybe not, right? The information that is pertinent to your project, you want to gather, but we don't need anything that is going to violate HIPAA or anything like that. In terms of things in customer discovery that we don't want to do, and this should make people's lives a lot easier. You're not selling anything, and you're not having to pitch anything. Has anybody in here had to sell something? Girl Scout cookies, wrapping paper. Yeah. Girl Scout cookies, I think, are easy. Like, who doesn't want a cookie, right? we are not having to sell or pitch anything. You're also not having to convince anybody that your innovation or your idea for a solution is a good one. That takes a lot of pressure off you. It's hard to change someone's mind. It's hard to convince them to engage with something new they've never seen before. It's easy just to ask people their problems and their pain points, and people love to talk about themselves and what they're going through. So you don't have to do any of this, and this should take a lot of the pressure off when you actually go out and talk to stakeholders. We are all about listening. We should be doing very little of the talking. The 80-20 rule and how it applies to stakeholder or customer discovery is you are listening 80% of the time and talking 20% of the time. All right, I'm going to pause there, and I think I have an activity next. But questions, thoughts, comments, anything online, Cindy?
There are a couple of questions. However, I think that this was a question from early on. I think you might have addressed a lot of these, but one person asked how to avoid leading interviews, how to overcome biases guided by your solution when you're conducting those interviews, and what are the right questions to ask. So I don't know if you want to summarize. I think you've addressed some of these things, but if you want to summarize that.
So the last question, we're actually going to get into that in just a second, and I'm going to show you examples of good questions and bad questions to ask. But I think one of the things that you can do that's most helpful is write all your questions down and share them with a team member, share them with a coach, share them with a mentor, and get their feedback on, are these questions open-ended? Are they non-leading? What biases do you see that I might have baked into this question? There's even a way that we can phrase it. So think about if you, let me see if I can come up with a good example. Tell me about your job is pretty, it gives them the ability to go any direction that they want to, right? So as opposed to saying, I know that you've got I've read that there's a lot of issues happening in your industry right now. Tell me about your job. What do they think they need to tell you about? The issues, right? So even that small little change of our language can determine how because people want to please other people for the most part. People want to give you the answer that they think you are looking for. So they're going to pay attention to the clues you gave them in the question and try to answer appropriately. Does that help? Is that good? Okay. Okay. Y'all at home should do this as well because it's fun. And I'm going to have everybody in the room do this very quickly. It's just a fun exercise to practice how you write that project thesis. So I'm going to introduce you to a piece of technology called Autopilot. This is fictional. Allegedly, it's being worked on by a company out in Silicon Valley, but I haven't read anything about it lately. What this piece of fictional technology does is that you are able to put it in your car charger, cigarette lighter, whatever generation you are, and it gives you autonomous driving capabilities. So make, model, year, does not matter in your car. With this piece of technology, you plug it in and you now have the equivalent of a level 3 Tesla, if you will, okay? So my question to you is, who do you think, there's multiple answers for this. There's not just one right answer. Who do you think a good customer is for this product? And then why do you think this is a valuable product that customer would want to invest in? So I'm going to give you just a minute or two to think about it. You can write it down. You can keep it in your head. And tell us a customer who would use Autopilot because, and the value you think it brings. And any of those verbs can work for you depending on who your customer is. Somebody might adopt it, use it, buy it, deploy it, doesn't matter. And you just need to write one. What would you say? So I'll give you does a minute sound good? Give me a minute to write one? Okay. About 30 seconds. Okay, so let's start with the customer. Who do you think a customer would be for this particular product? What do you think?
Well, I think this is the kind of product that adds value to what you already have.
Okay,
So this would be a customer that already really likes their car and
Mhm.
they don't want a different car,
Mhm.
but maybe they're aware of the benefits of having an electric car. So this is so that customer who really loves their car and they don't want another car,
okay,
but they want to improve, like enhance their car.
okay. So a customer base is a group of people who don't want to invest in a new car, but want some of the new autonomous technology that comes with a new car, will buy this. What's the value for them in it? What's that motivating reason why?
Um, to me, straightforward would be not having to get a new car.
Okay, so for financial reasons, and there's a financial driver. Okay, all right. So were we working on this? I would say that is a really, really large customer segment. Why don't you do some secondary and primary research and sort of narrow down, can you get a handle on who are those people that want the technology but aren't buying the new car, right? Okay, thank you. Yeah,
A busy mom with a toddler.
okay. We'll buy autopilot. Why?
To safely pass out snacks.
Okay,
Anything, being a mom, all kinds of things can happen in the
Yes.
backseat.
Yeah.
But just to safely engage with a younger child.
Mhm.
And so you've identified the customer as being it doesn't have necessarily be a mom, a parent.
okay,
It can be a parent who needs to whatever, hand snacks to
yep.
their child safely without disrupting traffic and
Mhm.
things like that.
Yeah. Money is a huge motivation for folks. Safety is a huge motivation for folks. Yes. So then you would be talking to folks who maybe had 10-year-old cars, right? Where they could be buying something new, but they're not going to. You'd be talking to parents with young children, right? And you both have made assumptions already, hypotheses that you would then go test about what a parent is trying to do while they're driving, how that's working for them, all of that. All right, what did you come up with?
Potentially freight delivery drivers.
Okay, yeah,
So that they can make their deliveries on time and kind of improve their efficiency without having to, or potentially extend their hours that they
Mhm.
are able to drive without having to deal with the risk of falling asleep and getting into accidents.
yeah, absolutely. So you've got a couple of hypotheses baked in there. You've got this idea that they are motivated to be more efficient, right? You would have to understand why, if they are, why are they motivated to be more efficient? What happens if they start to get tired and they have to take breaks? How does that impact them? Perhaps you might go and do discovery and find out that they like taking the breaks, right? They have their places on their routes that they go every time. And this one's got a cool slot machine that they go to. And this one sells amazing, char grilled burgers out of there, whatever it is, right? So we are making assumptions about what people want, and we have to go and make sure that our assumptions actually hold true in the real world and folks aren't actually motivated by something else. No, it makes sense in our head. We have to see what their motivations are. Was there anybody online that wanted to add anything?
No.
Okay, all right. So when we are doing our customer discovery and we are acting as detectives, we do have to really think about the questions that we're asking and how we're asking them. Okay, so I'm going to give you some questions, and I want you to tell me if you think they are good questions or bad questions to ask during customer discovery. So let's just say the person knows you're interviewing them. They know you're working on a research project. They know you're there to talk about their job, their problems, their pain points, things that are working well for them. So that's the context of these questions. All right. You've already done your introductions, yada, yada, yada. You're going through the conversation. I do have teams stop me and say, you would never ask that question first. I'm like, well, you're right. So let me lay the groundwork for you. It's not the first question. Okay. Here's the question. What is the biggest issue you face when dealing with this process or this activity? Good question or bad question? What do you think? Don't overthink it. Just make a good decision. Yes, it's a good question. Why do you think it's a good question?
Because it is an open-ended question. It allows them the space to actually, use their own thoughts and feelings about what exactly it is, but it also allows, in my mind, I'm gonna follow up once they say whatever they say.
Yes, yeah. So maybe some of you were hung up because I threw issue in here. Yeah, I get that. At least but you can ask this and you're allowing them. So let's say you've had the conversation. They've been like, we have an issue with payroll, right? Payroll gets messed up every time. And then so you say, okay, what's your biggest issue with that? Not because you don't want to just make the assumption that you think you know what the biggest issue is. Okay. Next one, would your department buy a product that could solve your payroll problems for you? Good question or bad question?
Bad.
It's a bad question. You shook your head immediately. Why?
Because the goal is to learn and be empathetic, not to sell something.
Yes.
Because chances are you might be a seller of that product, and that's why you're asking.
Yeah. And remember, you've asked people for some of their time so you can you can explore what's going on in their world. If you flip the script and say something like this, you immediately put on a sales hat. And we hate to be sold to, almost more than we hate to have someone change the conversation without us knowing what's happening, right? What are some of the implications of not solving the problem? So payroll, we've established this is your issue, this is your problem with payroll. What are the implications of not solving that problem? Good question, bad question. It's a good question. Yeah. Because you're either going to get a wealth of information about penalties that happen or about bonuses that are delayed, or you're going to get them, well, nothing. There are no implications. If there are no implications to something, that often tells us that people are not going to be motivated in the way we think they are. How are you dealing with this today? Good question or bad question? It is. Yeah. What kind of information can you get from that question?
State of the situation.
Yep. Also, whether or not they are dealing with it, and if they spent money to deal with it or not, right? Competitors. Yep, absolutely. What solutions have you tried? Yeah, it's a good question. Gives you same kind of information. Maybe they tell you we haven't tried any solutions, or that we've put in the budget for 25, 26 that we're going to invest in a solution. Well, that tells you your timeline a little bit, but then it tells you this is what we're up against in terms of competitors. I can dig in and ask how the solution's working, what they like, what they don't like. I can go back and do some research and figure out how much they paid. That tells me how I might be able to price myself into their market. Would you pay X for a solution that did Y?
Because I feel like yes, no.
Yeah. Well, it's yes, no. And you're asking them to hypothesize about what they might do in the future. And here's my example for that. Forgive me if you've heard it. So if you had asked me in 2003 if I would finance a cell phone for $800, I would have said no. That's an obscene amount of money. I don't like to finance things anyway. I don't want to contract with you. And my Nokia flip phone that I paid like $59.99 for works just fine. Well, guess what? How many iPhones have I financed through the years? Because you were asking me to guess about my future behavior. My answer, when I didn't have the thing and knew what it could do for me, was no. When someone came to me and said, does this solve your problem better than your Nokia? I went, oh, yeah, it really does, right? It's different. We don't want to ask people to guess what they might do in the future. We know this from just professional and personal relationships. Past behavior is the best indicator of future behavior. That's what we're looking for. What do you think about this solution? No, we're not selling anything. We're not asking them to innovate on anything. Now, there comes a time in your discovery where you take a prototype back to a group of people that you've already had conversations with, and you say, hey, we have talked to not just you, head of payroll, but 20 other people that are head of payroll and their staff and their CEOs, and we think that this might help you with your payroll issues. Give us some honest feedback on it. There's a time and a place for that. When you are doing initial customer discovery to figure out, do you have a place in the market? Do you have a model? What could that solution look like? You're not asking them to invent for you, because at this point, you don't know exactly who the solution is going to be for. And what if 40 different people give you 40 different ideas on how to iterate on that product? Then you don't know where to start, right? Okay.
Melissa?
Yes. Yay, that was my last slide. That was my last slide-ish. Yay, thanks Cindy for keeping me on track.
Well, I just want to thank Melissa for an excellent discussion today on customer discovery. It's really good. You can tell she was a teacher in her former life too, and she's just fantastic. So
Thank you,
really
Cindy.
happy to have you here today, Melissa. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.